Last week in aviation, a ton more Boeing drama, including planes falling from the sky. Another airline sale goes belly up, and Qantas doubles down on reef conservation. We've got so much to talk about, and I've only got 10 minutes to talk about it with you, so let's get started. Hi, I'm Micah. I'm a commercial aviation enthusiast who loves talking planes, and in this show, we're talking the top stories from aviation this past week. Buckle up, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Let's get started. Good Monday morning to all the listeners out there. This is Last Week in Aviation. In this edition, we are covering the week of March the 10th through the 16th. And boy, do we have so much Boeing news to get to. So let's get to it. First and foremost, if you remember last week, we talked about Boeing and Alaska Airlines being sued by 3 passengers regarding the MAX 9 door plug blowout. Well, this week, Boeing and Alaska Airlines have both claimed innocence in a separate lawsuit in response to the previous lawsuit filed last Monday. The plane maker and airline argue that they were not responsible for the aircraft's defectiveness. Now, this is a stark switch from Boeing's CEO David Calhoun's message 5 days after the Alaska Airlines door plug blowout by saying, and this is a quote, "We're going to approach this, number one, by acknowledging our mistake." So a stark switch there, but this is just the tippy top of what has happened with Boeing this past week. So let's talk about what's next. Compile all of what I just said with the fact that the FAA made statements this week that Boeing has been stonewalling their investigations and has been overall uncooperative to all of their inquiries. Then, Boeing admits that it can't locate any records of the work that was done on the Alaska Airlines 737 MAX 9 that was involved in the incident in January where the door plug blew out. And then on top of that, a 6-week audit into Boeing and its 737 MAX program found dozens of quality control problems at its production facilities. In one case, mechanics at Spirit Aerosystems, which is the company that has been producing a lot of the MAX components that have been in question quality-wise, was reportedly observed using Dawn dish soap on a door seal in place of lubricant. The seal was then reportedly cleaned up with wet cheesecloth. In another instance, Spirit employees were also found using hotel key cards to check door seals, which is beyond standard practice for quality. Then, to further the bad news, the European Union Aviation Safety Agency, which is essentially the FAA for Europe, has also recently said that it could suspend the approval of Boeing's aircraft production if necessary due to its recent glaring safety issues. However, the EASA was quick to point out that such a move is not imminent, with no immediate threat to Boeing's production certificate, but just the fact that the acting executive director of EASA was recently asked if the agency would be prepared to stop recognizing U.S. approvals for aircraft in regards to safety, and he said, quote, "If need be, yes," and that suggests that Boeing's trust in this industry is next to nil with most aviation and governing bodies around the world. Then we got news that the MAX 7 and MAX 10 were going to be delayed even further from getting their certification, which means that more airlines will be out not only money, but also time with the aircraft. Right now, there are pilots sitting waiting because of these aircraft that are not being delivered. So this is costing the airline a lot of money in the meantime. And then it was announced this week as well that United canceled its MAX 10 orders, switched some orders to MAX 9, and could be closing a deal with Airbus for A321neos instead. So that is a big deal as well. On top of all of that, we also had an aircraft incident this week. A LATAM 787-9 that was flying between Sydney Airport and Auckland Airport experienced a sudden mid-air drop, which in preliminary reports was shown to potentially have been caused by a chair movement in the cockpit. Now, not much more has been said on this, but a LATAM spokesperson said that they had a technical event which caused a strong movement, but the flight ended up landing on time in Auckland and has been operating flights ever since with no problems. Okay, that was a lot of information in a very short amount of time. So let's summarize what Boeing has gone through this past week. So first, Boeing and Alaska Airlines denied responsibility for the MAX 9 door plug blowout incident. The FAA stated that Boeing is uncooperative with their investigations. Boeing is unable to find the Alaska MAX 9 door plug blowout documentation. Spirit Aerosystems used Dawn dish soap as door lubricant and cleaned it up with wet cheesecloth, as well as checked seals with hotel key cards during safety inspection. The European Union Aviation Safety Agency says it will revoke Boeing certifications and aircraft approvals if things continue with their safety record. The MAX 7 and 9 certification was further delayed. United has canceled their MAX 10 order, swapping some orders to MAX 9s, but reports have surfaced that they are looking into closing a deal with Airbus for A321neos. A LATAM 787 took a nosedive and injured 50 people over a potential chair movement in the flight deck. So that is Boeing from this past week. Wow. So once again, we are on fire watch. Will this be the week that we see some firings here at Boeing? Will we see the CEO, David Calhoun, going? Will we see somebody else going? Will we see some board movement? Who knows? We're on fire watch, week 4. It's surprising to me that besides the CFO in week 1 when we talked about it, that we haven't seen more firings with Boeing, especially with a lot of the reports coming out. Let me know what you think in the comments. It's definitely a dumpster fire right now. Who do you think needs to get fired? Should anybody get fired? Is it really Boeing's fault? Whose fault is it? Is it Spirit Aerosystems? Give me a shout. Let me know what you think. For our next bit of news from this week, South African Airways sale goes bottom up. After 3 years of negotiations between the South African government and the Takatso consortium went belly up when both parties failed to agree upon the airline's value, resulting in the collapse of the long-awaited deal for South Africa to sell its share of the airline. The government announced the mutual termination of the agreement on Wednesday. The Department of Public Enterprises, which oversees the airline, will continue with the new corporate plan to expand South African Airways' fleet and routes while bringing on a new aviation strategy advisor to support the airline, with the South African government remaining as a key stakeholder. In some good news on the Pacific front, Cathay Pacific records its first profit after 3 years of losses. So after being one of the worst affected airlines during COVID-19, Cathay Pacific has now recorded its first profit in years. The airline has managed to capitalize on growing travel demand and convert the trend into a $1.3 billion profit. This was a serious relief for the carrier, which made 3 consecutive annual losses before this, including 2022, where the loss was around $840 million. The airline's current profit came against the revenue of about $12 billion, which was an increase of 85%. This is the largest monetary turnaround by a major international airline from the pandemic till now. In other good news this week, Qantas invests millions in Great Barrier Reef sustainability and other community grants. So Qantas has been historically mindful of the environment, especially where they are geologically. After all, they were one of the first airlines to globally commit to a net zero emissions by 2050. As part of this initiative, Qantas has its own aviation carbon reduction program and has already invested millions of dollars to various conservations, the most prominent being the Great Barrier Reef Foundation. To double down on their initiative, Qantas will build on its 15-year partnership with the foundation by investing an additional $6.7 million over 10 years. This reef restoration fund is to support scientists, traditional owners, and local tourism operators restoring the coral reefs across the Great Barrier Reef and other Australian coral reefs. Qantas Group Chief Sustainability Officer said the partnership is a key element of the airline's Nature Action Plan, and that connecting customers with natural landscape is at the core of what Qantas does. Qantas also announced that the Regional Grants Program will give another $1.35 million in grants this year to support Australian-based not-for-profit community groups and projects that benefit the regional areas, with $6.7 million aside for the next 5 years. So thank you, Qantas, for all that you're doing for the community and the environment. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was Last Week in Aviation. I hate to be done already, but my 10 minutes are almost up. So I just wanted to let you know that I appreciate you for listening. Thank you so much. This was week 4 of Last Week in Aviation. I can't wait to join you again next week on Monday for episode 5 of Last Week in Aviation. Who knows what we're going to be saying? Will we see some firings this week? Will we not? What kind of news headlines will we see? We'll find out, and you'll find out next week when we talk about it on Last Week in Aviation. Thank you, guys.